the studio. Hi, Aoife.
Thanks, Alec. Thanks for having me.
Great. As you know what to expect, as I said, that I take people to their last year in school. And I suppose I have to ask, were you that academic that was clamoring for university, or were you a lost soul like myself?
I was very much a lost soul. I had no clue what I wanted to do, no sense of direction. And when I look back on it, it's been a long time since I thought about my time at school. I think I was probably simply too young and I lacked mental maturity.
It's amazing how you get thrown into these sort of positions. How did you cope with that?
Probably not very well if I look back on it with my older eyes. So I was quite lost. I'm not even quite sure why I was so at sea. I spent a couple of years in a very, very small single gender school and then moved to a much larger mixed school. And I think that transition was probably more than I really knew how to cope with. And so I left school. Sometimes it just depends on when your birthday falls. And now
Sure.
I know that children start school a bit later. So I was very young leaving school with no clue what I wanted to do, no clear plan. And I didn't even know that you could have a plan.
Right. Okay. I get that feeling. All right. So anyway, you've emerged from school younger than you would expect to be. What were you going to do with yourself?
I had no idea. I thought I need to make a living. And it was drummed into myself and my siblings from quite a young age. Get a job, get a good job, get a job with a pension, because it was all about the pension. I thought didn't really want to do that. I think deep down I'd always loved writing. I thought at some point I'm going to write a book. And that took me many, many, many years before I finally got around to sitting down and actually writing. So when I left school, didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I spent a year in what's now the equivalent of a PLC. So I did a year of business studies and then headed off to France for a couple of months to work and to find my way.
Okay. Just tell me about the sort of experience as the PLC in business studies. I mean, obviously it covers, money and things like that. How did you find that? Did you adapt to it, or was it something maybe not that drew you in?
I really enjoyed that year. I made some really, really fantastic friends, and yes, it has structure. But it's more structured than university, but a lot less structured than school. So I had freedom. I could wear my own clothes. I had an element of autonomy. I still had assignments to do, and actually learned shorthand, which I can still do if I put my mind to it. I could still do my shorthand, and we did learn money. But I never really sort of got a handle on money until I was older. So we were doing accounting, but it was this double entry system
Sure.
that always seemed to flummox me. And now I can do it with one hand tied behind my back. I think it was just maybe the way things were taught. And again, I think I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
All right. So you found yourself, strange enough, as part of a team of PAs for an interesting person in France. How did that work out? I mean, I know it wasn't for a long time, but it certainly was a sort of an experience that you seem to have enjoyed.
Thoroughly enjoyed it. I headed off to France to find myself, to improve my knowledge of French. So I spoke a little bit of French because my dad spoke a couple of languages. Was always quite keen for all of myself. I've a lot of siblings, for us to learn at least one more European language. So off I went to France. So I sort of went over as no pair, but instead of looking after children, I was looking after an elderly woman. And so she needed 24-hour care. And there was myself and a couple of other girls living in this little teeny weeny apartment. It was a very, very strange arrangement. And French was probably the only common language. And that was a real eye opener for me, because I needed to stand on my own 2 feet. I had to learn to cook. I needed to learn how to do groceries. I needed to learn, to do laundry, to do cleaning. And it was really, I had to learn to live, and I had to learn to live in pretty short space of time.
Yeah, and the French are so accommodating with people who speak English.
Oh, hugely, absolutely, hugely. And the frowns, and this was Paris as well. And, you know, Parisians are slightly different to the rest of France. And Bill Bryson is very funny about Parisians. And so I would make these awful grammatical mistakes and get all the words wrong and spell things wrong. And yeah, but I made it through. I muddled through.
All right. It was to take you back eventually back to Ireland. So what were
Yes.
you going to do then?
Again, once again, I was still a bit of a lost soul who could speak French badly and struggled to spell. I could speak French. I just really would have struggled to write it. So I decided to put my year of business studies to use and tempt for a couple of years in back in the day when temping was a thing, and that was something that you could do. So I kind of drifted from here or there to various different places. And then my journey, I found myself working for a firm of estate agents
Right.
that are still in existence. And between one thing and another, I met a man and bought a house at the age of 20.
As you do.
As you do, yeah. Other people were out, I don't know, doing all sorts of different things. And I was up to my elbows in toolboxes and saws, and because the house needed major, major, major renovations. We spent about 5 years learning how to wield a hammer and all sorts of crazy things. And when I look back on it, the renovations that we did ourselves were just completely and utterly insane.
You have to find these things out at some
You do,
stage.
yeah.
But I mean, it must be a real experience taking on the responsibilities of a mortgage at such a young age.
Well, the my then husband was there was quite an age gap, and so for him to at 20 taking on the responsibility of mortgage probably just seems completely and utterly lunacy. But you know, for somebody else who's a bit more mature, maybe not quite so bonkers. So when I look again, you know, you'd always look back on things and go, well, now if I'd only known then what I know now. But these turning points in our lives are what shape us, and they are what make us the people that we are today. So when that relationship broke down, it transpired that we're hugely in debt, and we had an endowment mortgage, which is be unheard of to have now,
I know.
and
Oh.
all of these just these crazy things that are practically probably illegal now. And so once again, I kind of found myself having to start my life all over again as maybe mid-20s with a young, with a young child. And I had a fantastic idea that I would go back to university because I never went to university when I left school. So I started studying at night with the Open University. And what should have taken me 5 years took me 10, but
Right.
that is another story.
Right.
And again, that was an amazing, incredible experience. And I couldn't have done it without the help and support of the Open University, because the whole point is that they accommodate students with whatever personal problems you have. It doesn't matter, they've seen it all, they've had it all thrown at them, and they will figure out a way to help you over the line.
I mean, it's quite interesting because we're talking at a time, and mentors and coaches were not a phenomenon of the day as they have become more recently to people. So you really had to plow on yourself.
I did, yeah. And I found before coaching and mentoring even sort of existed in my vocabulary, I remember lying at home. I'd been quite unwell for a while. I was lying on my sofa feeling really sorry for myself. And I was watching television, and this infomercial came on, and it was Anthony Robbins. And I had never heard of this person before, didn't even know what an infomercial was. For me, they were always about cleaning products that you never really wanted. But this one seemed different, and it really piqued my interest. And it was a set of CDs, 30 CDs, and a workbook, and all sorts of cool stuff. And it came with a money back guarantee. I thought, okay, if I hate it, at the time it seemed expensive. If I hate it, I said I can send it back. That was probably maybe mid-90s, and I actually still have those CDs, and they are threadbare because I had listened to them so often. That was the first time I realized that it's up to me. I need to take responsibility for my own stuff, and it's up to me to figure out what it is that I want. Yes, I'll always need help and guidance and support, but at the end of the day, it's up to me to take responsibility.
It's a nice idea that you found something which sort of now we have in terms of coach and mentor, which you would be involved in. We'll talk about a bit later, but you recognize the need for outside help and was able to take the lessons and use it.
I think everybody needs a coach, a mentor, a support, somebody other than a family member or trusted friend at some point in their life. And at most points of my life now, I'd be working with maybe two or three people for different things.
Hmm.
So I would always have a coach to help me and challenge me in my business. Um, and I'd maybe have a coach that would be working with another area of my life as well. So, and even coaches need coaches. And Anthony
Yeah.
Robbins would be probably one of the more high profile coaches. And he would even say that he still works with coaches.
Yes. And but you were telling me also, we won't go into the details, or maybe we should, I don't know. You seem to always attract chaos around you. Tell us a bit about
Yes.
that. As in, there'll be people out there who will resonate with this highly.
Yes. I think some people do seem to unconsciously attract an element of chaos. You know, life is not dull if there isn't some element of chaos. And I do my very best not to attract as much, but I do seem to, and so what? I will just deal with it. So one of the reasons it took me so long to do my undergrad was because in that 10 years, my relationship broke down, there was a death in the family, I moved house, and then the house that I moved into went on fire. And
Wow.
so I was out of that house. Yeah, I was out of that house for quite a while. But I've been in two long-term relationships, and neither of which went according to plan. And each time the relationship broke down, I found myself quite substantially in debt.
Right.
And I thought, oh, this is why do clever people do silly things? And that, in a sense, really, really started my journey into the science behind neuroeconomics. Why do we spend our money the way we spend it? Why do clever people do silly things? Money management is easy, more in, less out the end. And and at this time in my life, I was working in financial services, and had made the same mistake again.
Right.
It was my thought patterns.
Well, let's put it this way. We're going to talk about that now because it's quite interesting. It smacks of the cobbler's children. You're in loan and debt restructuring, and you find yourself struggling with money.
Yep.
And, this is quite a common tale in business. So tell us about the neuroeconomics. I hadn't come across this phrase. Tell us more about this and what you've told us what attracted you to it, but tell me more about it.
Well, I only came across the expression probably about 5 or 6 years ago. In a sense, I probably knew that there was more to my struggles with money. I said that there's more to this than just the simple case of more in, less out the end. And it was my relationship with money and my relationship with myself, and again my relationships with other people. So I would be overly generous, over giving, and overly supportive of other people, and then I would allow myself. So again, Tony Robbins taught me, and Jack Canfield would say as well, about take responsibility. So
Right.
if you find that you are making the mistakes, just take responsibility. It's not about blame or shame. It's about, okay, I'm the one who did the thing. I'm the one who co-signed the loan. Take responsibility and figure out a way to fix it. And if you don't know how to fix it yourself, go and ask somebody to help you. And so when I discovered that I had these patterns of behavior when it came to money, I said, well, I need to go and I need to find somebody who can help me figure out my own thought processes and patterns. And I then trained as a certified money coach and went on then subsequently to do lots of other things in that related field.
Well, tell me, what is a certified money coach for those business people out there who are struggling and wondering how they can get back on track?
There's a subtle difference between a financial advisor and a money coach. I
Oh,
happen to be both. I just don't work in the space of offering advice anymore. So a money coach works more on your relationship with money. We work on your decisions based in alignment with your values. We work on a more long-term plan that is around how you think and how you're thinking about money. Whereas the financial advisor gets more into sort of the more nitty gritties about, okay, these are the These are the infrastructures that we need to put in place to make sure that the plan that you have worked out with your coach, that we can actually make that happen, such as structured retirement planning, that you're a bit more tax efficient, that you've taken out quite specific products that offer you a level of protection. But a coach works more with your patterns and your patterns of behavior, where those patterns have come from, and even just the thoughts that you have with yourself that may or may not be serving you.
So would it be fair to suggest that there's a role for both people in your lives?
Absolutely. And I do, and I generally work, if I am working with a client, usually work in harmony or alongside either their accountant, their business coach, their financial advisor. Absolutely, they work in harmony. One doesn't replace the other, and neither are they mutually exclusive. So it's about working together, and just it's having the right people on your team.
Perhaps you might share with our listeners, what are some of the more common traits of people who have issues around money? I think we all have at times, but what are the more common traits that people might have?
Interestingly, people, when you say why this person has money problems, the automatic assumption is that they don't have enough. But some people have money and they are unable to spend it. They just cannot bring them, so they are overly frugal. And other common traits are people are overly generous. And so money problems are about our relationship with money and how we treat money. And do we allow money to have power over us? Or do we have a healthy and respectful relationship with money? So money is there it has a purpose. It is a means of exchange. And it's the value that we put on it. And if we're not valuing ourselves, then sometimes people who don't value themselves struggle to charge sufficient amounts for their time and expertise. So that again is a lot of it that comes down to our relationship with money, or what messages did you learn when you were growing up? So in my case, the unconscious messages that I was getting was that my mum was a stay-at-home mum and my father was the income earner. So somehow those messages got a bit muddled in my mind. And I then had a tendency, past tense, to hand over my power over money to the person that I was in a relationship with.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, as somebody who talks about money and helps people manage their money, I wouldn't have thought frugality was an issue, but obviously you've identified it as one for many people.
It can be, yeah. Some people can be overly frugal. And again, it can be because of how they were brought up, or how their parents spoke about money, or how their parents didn't talk about money, or the messages that they picked up when they were young, when they were a child. I come from a generation of run like you left the immersion on. And leaving the immersion on was or leaving a light bulb on were two of the greatest crimes that you could ever commit. And then sometimes those messages become a bit muddled, and we carry those into adult life and become overly frugal, even though it's not necessary.
You talked about money there just a second ago. We were talking about it in a sense of power, and this sense of handing over the power, and the money I've earned, I've handed it to somebody else, as in handing power as well.
Well, money only has power over us if we allow it to have power over us. So there are two ways to make money. You can work for your money, or you can make your money work for you. So what I do when I work with clients, I'm working with clients to help them transition to having their money work for them, and shifting their mindset that money is simply a tool. It is a means of exchange. It has no power over them other than the power that they give it.
In terms of then people managing money, which a lot of people seem to be quite bad at, what are the key mistakes they're making, or the tricks that they're missing?
One of the key tricks is making a spending. So make a spending plan. Call it whatever you want. Some people call it a budget. Personally, that word just makes my hair stand on end. So it's a word you'll very, very rarely hear me use. I say make a spending plan that's in alignment with your values. And you need to figure out what your values are first. And that's something that I help people do. And then the mistake that people make is they tend to spend and then analyze and then beat themselves up. And then you're in this cycle of frustration. But when you make a spending plan and you make your plan in alignment with your goals and values, what you're doing is you are telling your money where you want it to go first, not wondering where it ran off to and then trying to chase it down the road. So when you make a spending plan and the first person who to get paid from that plan is you, so make a spending plan and pay yourself first are probably the two key things, the fundamentals that I do stress.
Right. And where do you see that happening most? Is it with these self-professionals out there, or?
But people struggle with, I'm being rather general,
Yes.
many people struggle with the concept of paying themselves first. And I get a lot of resistance when I even suggest that. I go, oh, I'll have to pay the mortgage and I have to pay and have to pay and have to pay. I go, yes, absolutely. I'm not saying that you don't take care of your other responsibilities. You are simply adding yourself to that list and putting yourself at the top. So if you normally pay the gas bill first or you normally pay the revenue first, well, then just put yourself at the top. So pay me first and then pay everybody else afterwards. Because wealthy people pay themselves first and they spend what's left. And people with less money tend to spend first and then pay themselves if there is anything left.
Wow. Okay, that's an interesting concept. And again, are we talking about people who are salaried, or are we talking about people who would be self-employed, or maybe working for their own companies?
Both. Both. And if you're salaried, the simplest way to pay yourself first is to get somebody else to do it for you. So the more you can automate, the easier that you can make your life. It frees up your mind to do other things. So if you're in a salaried role, your first port of call is your payroll department. And you say to them, how do I pay myself first? So that could be a pension deduction. That could be a save as you earn. It could be basically when it's deducted at source, it's one less thing for you to do, one less thing for you to think about. So it frees up your mind for other things. And if you're self-employed, maybe your income can be varied or a bit sporadic. It might be something that you need to do manually, but the method doesn't matter. The action does.
You're mentioning their saving, and people are, again, I'm generalizing now. Many people struggle to save. So why is that? Because it's not necessarily the lack of income, but a mindset, I think.
Sometimes it's priorities, and saving for, I don't save for a rainy day because it's Ireland, so it's going to rain. And I found when I had a rainy day fund or I had this emergency fund, that was all I was unconsciously attracting. And so I was saving for emergencies, and then I had this enormous house fire. I said, well, okay, I'm not going to save for emergencies ever again. So what I do instead is I give my various funds that I give all of my savings have a target. So this is for, and my target is this. So this is the amount, this is the thing or the experience, and this is the by when date. And then I give them inspiring headings. So like I've got a covered fund. This is my burst out the front door out of lockdown after COVID holiday fund. Yeah. So I give all of the funds or my bank accounts, whatever it is, I give them headings that make sense to me. So instead of groceries, which is a bit dull, I always have healthy food for me and my family. Right. So by simply changing the language that I'm using also helps me focus. Okay, so this fund, this is the specific purpose that it has, this is the specific amount, and this is the date that I want to have it. And that helps me stay focused and stay on track.
And how do you keep your money separated? Because this is one of the challenges a lot of people have.
I have a couple of different methods. Now, I don't pay bank charges. I haven't paid them in 30 odd years, and I have no intention of starting today. So if you are saving, and you're opening up multiple accounts, just make sure that those accounts are not attracting charges. So simple ways are an online savings account that's attached to your current account. In general, doesn't attract charges, and you can do a straightforward transfer out. Other bank accounts like N26, Revolut, use what they call virtual vaults or spaces. So that's another really simple way of saving without incurring extra charges, and you don't have another IBAN to remember or another set of passwords to remember. You can be as super simple as the jam jar in the kitchen, or you can be as fancy schmancy as your offshore Cayman bank account. Doesn't, again, like I said, again, it doesn't really matter. What matters, the action matters rather than the method.
Wow. You wrote a book about all of this. Maybe you'd like to just talk about this for a minute, and the name of the book and where people might find it.
I have several books.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Not just one book, several books.
Well, when I was young, I said I always want to be a writer. Then at some point I said, well, if I want to be a writer, I have to actually write more than just the lines that I've been given as homework. So sometimes I write under the name Prudence Moneypenny, and sometimes I write under Aoife Gaffney, and all of the books are available on Amazon. Some of them are Kindle, and some of them are paperback as well. So I've co-authored, and I've also written books in my own name. But Amazon, just have a look at Prudence Moneypenny or go to my website, and the books will all be listed there.
Fantastic. Tell us a bit about Prudence Moneypenny. Where did you come up with that as a handle? It's quite an interesting one. I know part of it, but tell our listeners.
Well, there are actually a couple of other Aoife Gaffneys, and although I need to stand out. So Prudence came from something an accountant said to me about 30 years ago. And she said, if you're having a conversation with your bank manager and you want them to take you seriously, keep getting the word prudence into the conversation.
I love that.
It's like, I'll be very prudent. I always exercise prudence. I thought, okay, well, that's what I'll call myself, because there's a difference between being prudent and being frugal. So being prudent is being sensible, being strategic, using leverage, using things to your advantage. And then, so we come up with Prudence, and then she needed a last name, and I was watching a Bond film with my son, and there we go. Prudence Moneypenny was born.
Yes, and the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
I suppose in the last minute or 90 seconds, what sort of parting message would you like to leave for our audience out there?
Book in for a chat. So at any point, book in for a chat with me. Absolutely. My parting message is book in for a chat, and I will reveal more secrets. So it's prudencemoneypenny.com or prudencemoneypenny.com